Hello, impressive souls, and welcome to a new episode of Live Your Impressivity Show. I'm Alex Badica, your host, and as usual, I am super excited about a new topic. This time, we are talking about nature journaling. Have you ever thought about connecting with the nature around you and really feeling its powers? Maybe for healing, for mindfulness, but even more so for creativity and inspiration? My guest today is a well-seasoned walker of London streets, and she has over 10,000 walking hours under her belt. Jackee Holder is a custodian of trees, and she gathers stories on paper and through spoken word to keep memories of our urban woods and forests. Jackee is an author, leadership and wellness coach, and supervisor working in leadership and organizational development. And we will talk how nature journaling plays a role in these areas as well. Jackee is the author of 4 nonfiction titles, including 49 Ways to Write Yourself Well and Be Your Own Best Life Coach. And she now published her new writing map called ReWilding the Page, a portable guide offering writing techniques for connecting with nature and the environment. I'm so excited to share with you all the amazing tips and practices that Jackee gave us in order to be more close to nature and to understand how we can bring that resilience into our day-to-day life and work with journaling. Let's meet Jackee. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Live Your Impressivity Show. Hi, Jackee. Thank you so much for joining me, and welcome to my podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And we just had a little chuckle, didn't we? Because I realized that we've met before.
I think it was 2016 or 2017 when you were doing a workshop with the Psychologist magazine in London. And it was about writing. And I was just sharing with you right before that I still remember one of the exercises in the workshop about the tree and how we can be resembled with a tree and how we actually go through different obstacles. And it's something that I really love. And I also share it, and I have different exercises with this kind of visualization. So thank you for inspiring me. I mean, after all these years, I still remember that exercise.
Could I just say that that workshop was actually either 2014 or 2015.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. It must have been 2015 because that's when I went to London. Yeah.
Already out of that came these cards. And what was a card that I pulled right at the front? What advice would a wise ancient tree have to give you about your current challenge? That was the root of this card.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, really beautiful. And I really love that you are talking so much about nature journaling, which is the topic that we're going to dive deeper in today. And I'm really curious to learn more about how we can connect more with nature, because journaling is such a powerful tool that we can use for inspiration, for well-being, for balance, and combining it with being more aware of the nature around us, I think brings all of these elements. But before we start with that, I want to ask you, Jackee, how did you discover the power of writing?
What a great question. How did I discover the power of writing? I think writing discovered me, Alexandra. My memory of childhood, I have some very, very strong memories of childhood. And one of those was that I was one of those children that when we went out on Saturday evenings to go and visit family friends across London, I was the child crouched in the corner of the car, still trying to read my book when the light was going down. So I always had a book. I was always reading, and I always had pen and paper. And I made it my business to just create. I was always creative. And even though there was a lot of stuff going on around me, I think that was the way I found my calm and my peace. And it was a way that I expressed myself. So writing was something that I was very, very comfortable with. But I felt that there were also a way that I could really express myself in the world. And then by the time I got to university, I became more aware that I would keep notebooks and I would jot things down. I would jot down how I was feeling, what I was noticing, and what I was observing. But it wasn't a really strong practice until I became a mother. When I became a mother, and I was 26 when I had my daughter Aida. I'd gone back when I moved in 2015 and found those journals. I was writing regularly every day. I felt like pregnancy was a real pivotal moment in my life. And I began to kind of re-envision the kind of future that I wanted for myself. And journaling was the way that I think I found my voice and I expressed myself on the page. It was like bringing the truth to my inner world and voicing it, expressing it. And I felt that I became more authentic in the woman that I was becoming because I was changing. You know, not only was I no longer a single woman being able to do what she wanted with her life, I was now a mother with responsibilities. And with that came a change in values. And so what I found was that my journal traveled with me. It traveled with me throughout those transitions, throughout those changes. And it became like a silent witness and a place that I actually treasured. You know, I treasured those moments in my journal because I didn't have to pretend. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't like I had to, you know, I could spend money on clothes or food or going out, but my journal was pretty inexpensive. I felt better after I did it. I got down a lot of stuff that was like yicky or ucky. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, people that I was having a difficult time with. I had quite a demanding, high pressure job. It was a really good job, but, you know, there were people that were really difficult that I had to work with. And my journal was a place that I could deposit a lot of that stuff. I've actually got in my practice this equation that says writing about the good stuff plus the rough stuff equals the right stuff, as in writing. And that's where that equation came from. That's where that sort of, you know, needing to have both, that one leads to the other.
That's really powerful. And I really love that you found all of those benefits in putting pen to paper, especially through a period of time when everything was changing. It was a period of transformation in your life, finding that awareness and also a release, a stress release from everything that was annoying you around you. Like you said, you know, that the people that you were working with or anything, you know, instead of bringing it with you, you were depositing it in the journal. And I think that's really beautiful because this is one of the most beautiful benefits of journaling and most useful for our health as well.
But you know about the work of Dr. James Pennebaker from the University of Texas, all of the research and the evidence base about writing about traumatic, difficult, challenging moments. We know that that has a huge impact on physical health and well-being, psychological well-being, immune system, stress. It reduces stress, it lowers blood pressure, all of those things. And what I found was I was getting all of those benefits. And of course, that's where gratitude comes in. A lot of the scientific evidence base about writing gratitudes, writing things down. I know these are all the things that you've talked about in the past, but when you kind of bring those into the everyday practice of journaling, you see how beneficial they are, particularly given where we are right now. We're post-pandemic, but we're still in a hugely changing world. And my God, do we need journaling more than ever now? You know, like just thinking about what people have gone through, living through lockdown. You know, I heard people say things like, God, I feel like my days just drift past me. I don't know what day of the week it is. Well, actually, for me, journaling helped to punctuate my days. They helped me to see the beauty in each day when I couldn't wander very far, but I just had to, you know, be able to really broaden my view outside my window or walking beyond my front door, appreciating what was the beauty that was around me in my locality in terms of those green spaces, the parks, even noticing the buildings that actually was part of my lived environment. It's amazing.
That's so beautiful. And by paying attention to what is around us, we can actually find ourselves more grounded. So this actually leads me to the next question, because you are doing now a lot of guidance for nature journaling. And I love that, because I was reading about your passion for walking as well, and for really encouraging people to look around themselves. But I want to find out more about what is nature journaling in general, how you found it, how you really decided to focus more on nature journaling, what are the benefits, and how can we set a routine with nature journaling?
So let me start with nature came and found me. That's the honest truth, Alexandra. I was going through a bit of a tough time. I would probably say I was heartbroken at the time, but I wasn't really naming it as that. I was also on the brink of descending into quite a depression, and I couldn't think of, like, what could I do that would help me through this particular dark space. And I use that, because the word dark, very deliberately, because I think often in the darkness is a huge amount of richness, and that's what that space opened up inside of me. So what happened was, I used to find myself, this is when I knew I was heading for a bit of a problem. I was lying on my sofa quite a bit, a lot more than I used to. And I thought, what's going on here, Jackee? There's something going on for you. And as I sat there, I remember I lived in a duplex apartment, I loved it, because I was right at the top of the house, and it was like I could literally reach my arm out the window and touch the moon. And on the full moon, I remember each month I would just lie there looking up at the moon and thinking, God, the moon is so beautiful. It's so close to me. I just felt like it just filled me with a lot of light and a lot of hope. And one night it said to me, look, I want you to follow the 37 bus route that ran from Peckham. I used to be able to pick it up around Brixton Hill, and it used to go all the way to Richmond Park. And I thought, I dare you to get up and run from Tulse Hill to Richmond Park. And that's what I did. I got up and I ran that morning. I followed the route of the bus, and I found myself like 11, 12 miles later in Richmond Park. And I don't know if you've ever been into Richmond Park, but it's just absolutely wonderful. It's one of London's Royal Park Reserves. It's one of the most natural habitats that we've been able to protect in London. And what I love about it is it just feels really, really wild. But before that, I had actually been running from my front door to my local park, running all the way around my park. And I remember that first morning I did it, I was so amazed, because I literally had been not doing much exercise. And I spotted this tree on the top of the hill. And I thought, oh, why don't I just head towards that tree? And that's where I will stop my run. And when I got to the tree, it was just this enormous, I imagined it was an oak tree, and I found out later that it was. And it had a huge canopy, and its branches looped into the air and fell down and literally was sweeping the ground. So it was quite magical. And I would end up every morning making a pilgrimage to that tree. And that tree helped me center myself, ground myself, listen to my voice. I found myself feeling really creative under that tree, but also very solution focused under that tree. Alice Walker has this fantastic quote where she talks about she always felt in nature what she should have felt in a church. That's how I felt under that tree. It felt like, that sometimes, when I walk into Westminster Cathedral, I would want to hush, or I walk into Suffolk Cathedral, I'd want to be quiet. That's how I felt. That's how my body felt when I was under that tree. And so that became a very, very sacred and precious time for me. And it opened me out. So I read somewhere recently that when we're inside the home or an inside environment, we only use two of the senses, seeing and hearing. When I'm out in nature, it feels like I'm having a more full-bodied experience. And that's one of the reasons why it has been over a period of almost 20 years now, I feel like I have been folding nature and journaling into every part of my work. as a coach and a coach supervisor and as a human being, because I can see like the parallel process between nature outside of us is a lens into the nature inside of us. I feel it's a way we can help, support, and inspire people to really connect to their true essence and nature through trees. But also, it meant that I became more of a custodian of nature. I began to care about the trees. I learned the names of trees. You know, I would go off, I'd go run along, pick a leaf off the tree, get home. I couldn't wait to Google it. And then I became really, really curious about the myths associated with trees, the legends around the trees. So therefore, I started to notice my environment. I started to want to care about. I pick up rubbish. I walk along where I live now. My road is notorious for people throwing stuff out of their cars because there's a lot of takeaways on the main road. I go around and take up the rubbish so that nature can breathe more, and also I can walk and feel more inspired on my street. And that's because nature taught me to take more care of the environment, and ultimately we take more care of ourselves and each other.
This relationship with trees, I think it's so special, and it really carries a lot of energy as well, because trees have this beautiful grounding energy. They're connected to the source, the main source in the earth, and they just give us this beautiful inspiration as well. So I really love that you shared with us this beautiful journey that you had with nature finding you. And I'm curious how we can set a routine with nature journaling. Is this something that we can do as a frequent journaling exercise and practice, or something that we can just have it, something in our toolkit for when we need to be more grounded and more connected when we go through rough times? What do you think would be the best way to actually connect with nature journaling?
Alexandra, I actually feel like both of those are a way in. I think nature, I work with a lot of leaders in organizations. And one of the things that I really help leaders with is to build their resilience and their well-being practices. And it's really interesting. One of the easiest, best, most energizing, uplifting ways to connect people with their resilience and their well-being is to get them to tell you stories or memories about the places in nature that energize them. There's this really wonderful quote by Robert Macfarlane. He says that I have been long fascinated by how people understand themselves using landscape, by the topographies of the self we carry within, and by the maps we make with which to navigate these interior terrains. For some time now, it has seemed to me that the two questions we should ask of any strong landscape are these. Firstly, what do I know when I'm in this place that I can know nowhere else? And then the second question is, what does this place know of me that I can know of myself? Those two questions just blew me away. And when I share those questions in a one-to-one conversation, whether I'm on Zoom, whether I'm on the telephone, whether I'm running a group coaching call, I'm doing individual supervision, it's like you can literally hear the breath of me and the other person that I'm with. It never surprises me how many times it literally stops people in their tracks. And then out of that comes a story of a tree or a river or a place in nature that there was their secret spot, a place that they, when they go to, they feel re-energized and reconnected. You can literally either see or hear people coming alive. And that's what I get people to plug in by then, identifying what is it about this space that makes you feel this way. And then I get them to think about, well, actually, if that place is in another country, where can you get a bit more of that around you? So we're not just waiting until our energies are depleted. Yeah, we're thinking about how can we top up our reserves on a regular basis, because we know that when we take care of ourselves, we are going to be more productive. We are going to have a better quality thoughts. We are going to have and nurture and create better relationships. We are going to be more creative and more resourceful. So I think it's a combination of both of those things. But of course, I took my adventures of walking and running around London and engaging and connecting with the land, because that's what I did. So I would make it a clear intention that wherever I ended my daily run or walk, it would have to be in a green space. I never ended it in front of like Starbucks or Cafe Nero. It had to be in a green space. That marked the end of my run or walk. And then obviously what would happen was then I would go and explore that area. So if I was in Battersea Park, I would go and find the baobab plane tree, or there's a beautiful towering plane tree. Battersea Park has got a lot of plane trees, but there is one that is hidden away. You literally have to walk down into it. And when you come into this enclosure, you'd have to know it to walk into that space. And in fact, I had a series of photographs done for my column in Psychology's magazine, where I do the Right to Flourish column each month. And one of those photos is by that lovely plane tree. And that's like my little secret when I go into Battersea Park, where I just can catch a quiet moment, catch my breath. And that's what I feel like nature journaling really helps people to find those spots, find those moments, but also to use nature as a metaphor, because that's why I created the writing map, Writing with Fabulous Trees and ReWilding the Page. There are a series of illustrated prompts, because that's what I used to do. I used to doodle all over my journals as I was writing, because I felt like the two was a really good fit for me. I loved drawing as a child. I should have really done a degree in graphic design. That was really an area that I was really interested in, but I went off and did a degree in government politics. But I brought the two together because I think our brain needs that stimulus. If we think about digital distraction, our brains are so fried. I wanted to bring in color. I wanted to bring in illustrations. I wanted to bring nature. So it was so appealing that it would draw the person in, but equally it would draw them to the page.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I was actually going to dive a little bit deeper into the most recent writing map that you published, the Urban Forest, because I think that really being aware of our spaces, and especially when we live in cities, in big cities, surrounded by so much concrete. And, you were sharing earlier about Richmond Park, and I used to live in Chiswick, which was very close to Richmond Park. Then I remember going to the Chiswick House and Gardens Park, which was really, really beautiful. And the same with seeing those trees and finding the small hidden spots in between the trees. That was really beautiful. And now what I really love is noticing the trees when they change colors throughout season, and especially now, because it's going to turn from green into golden and brown, and that beautiful festival of colors, that's really, really beautiful. And I really love watching that. It also makes me realize, because in Bucharest, where I'm based right now, there are a few parks, but of course, when you're really busy running around and doing a lot of tasks, or even just working from home, it's sometimes very easy to get distracted and forget that there is also nature out there. I'm lucky because I have a bunch of trees right outside my window, and I can actually see this changing of season. But how about applying this urban forest writing map, ReWilding the Page, for really busy people who barely have time to connect with the nature, and they just, they have very set schedules, and they just go from point A to point B every day, and they need maybe an extra push to connect with nature?
You've just hit the nail on the head. Yeah, that's why I created the urban forest writing map, rewilding the page, exactly for that reason. It's come out of what I needed for myself. It's come out of all the different conversations that I have with my coaching and supervision clients. And with, I've got, two of my family members, one's a head teacher, one's a deputy head. It's like, like finding breathing space. How do we do that? And I wanted to find a way that we could do this easily. So first of all, I want to say that the writing map is a fold out map that is pocket size. That means you can carry it with you anywhere you go. It's easy to carry, it's light, but it folds out into these 12 journaling prompts. Now, one of the things people often say to me, Alexandra, is that, well, where do I start? Do you know what I mean? You've got the trees outside your window. Yeah. So, for example, one of the prompts on the rewilding the page is to prescribe yourself a green prescription. Green prescription. We know that the color green relaxes our nervous system. Yeah, we know that from the evidence base. And when we look at the color green, it invites movement. So immediately the invitation is to just scan your environment, maybe outside your window, step outside your front door, go for a 10-minute walk around your neighborhood and look for all of the ways in which the color green is showing up. Yeah. And maybe just do a list, simple list. That could be just one part of the prompt that takes you no more than a couple of minutes. But already you're starting to notice more than you would normally notice. So in a way, we're bringing in mindfulness. Yeah, we're bringing in a way of becoming more connected, more grounded, more observant. The prescription then goes on to say that plants, we can notice the plants around us, but you can also remember that plants detox your lungs. And then I encourage people to write themselves a green prescription. Now, I created a template for green prescription on my website. It's free. You can go there to JackieHolder.com and download it. And the idea is you choose a place in nature that you can go to get energized. You might decide to just highlight where your favorite tree is. You might have a place where you just keep, you're very observant of the way that the plants and the flowers grow. So this green prescription becomes a self-prescribed prescription for you to think about how you intentionally, not accidentally, but intentionally connect with nature. And you begin to gain some of the many byproducts of what we know we gain by nature, but in the view that it becomes a reciprocal relationship. Because we don't want to just take from nature. I see the work that I do as a way of championing what nature gives us, as a way of really reminding people of their connection to nature and why we need to keep, we need to take care of what we have left of this precious resource for the future.
Please, if you'd like to share with us, absolutely. What else can we use as a journaling practice to get started?
Lovely. I love this one, particularly because when you came on, you said the leaves or the colours of nature are changing. So we're moving into the autumn, which is just a kaleidoscope of different colours. But I like this idea of, it's like a way of becoming really mindful out in nature. It says, find a fresh leaf to examine. So you just go, you ask permission from the tree or a plant, take the leaf off, and you literally examine the leaf for a minute. You look at the shape of the leaf. If you look really closely at leaves, you will see that some of them have got hundreds and hundreds of veins, like tributaries of rivers. Now, when we slow down and we really begin to notice, we notice all the detail that is there in the leaf. And, that means that's a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes away from the screen of our phones, being mindful and thoughtful out in nature. And I shared this, I came across this Japanese practice, which obviously the Japanese have given us the beautiful concept of forest bathing, which is the way that they really helped very very stressed out Japanese managers and leaders who are some of the most stressed out workers in the whole of the world, to go back into the forest, go back into the woods and reconnect with the woods and the forest, which actually was our first home. Yeah, we are, by biophilia, if you look at that term, you know, we are naturally, we are hardwired to nature, which is why so many of us get so much from when we reconnect to, I think is often rooted in some of those earlier childhood experiences. So that's where I came across a lovely Japanese practice called Hape Zome. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's spelled Zome for the Zome. And this is where I used to do this as a kid. You get a piece of paper, you put the leaf underneath it, you press it underneath another piece of paper, and then you take a crayon or a pencil, and you just rub all over the leaf, and then you get the imprint into the piece of paper. And that way you can just get creative. You can write around the print, you can see the detail that you captured in the print. And I co-wrote the ReWilding the Page writing map with the wonderful Sean Levin. He is the founder of the company Writing Maps, and he's really good on helping us expand some of the prompts. And we came up with, use a time when you or a character turned over a new leaf. So there's more to expand. If you then feel like, yeah, actually I feel a bit creative now, I could try just writing about something. You know, everybody has had some point in their life where they've had to turn over a new leaf, or maybe they want to turn over a new leaf. Maybe that's where they are right now. Sometimes we can fictionalize what we want to be or what we want to do, take it away from being so close and so personal, put it into the third person, and suddenly all kinds of possibilities become available to us. And so we left the reader with a couple of more prompts, which was what was gained, and this is the one I love, what was left behind. You know, just using that metaphor of leaves falling, what was left behind. You know, because often we're afraid of leaving something behind, or it's the very thing that we need to leave behind that we're holding on to. So the hope is that these questions will be a quest that help people to go deeper, you know, get to the roots, really turn over the soil of what they're experiencing, what they really want. And you can see, you can go anywhere with this.
What I'm taking away from these prompts, which I absolutely love, and especially the one with the leaf, this is something that I'm so looking forward to putting into practice. I really love that it brings you an encouragement to self-awareness, to reflection, to mindfulness, all of these things that we kind of neglect sometimes. And it's exactly what we need, especially in those moments of rush and hurry and being in this, you know, caught up in this day-to-day life. And I love that this is what the healing power of nature can do. And I also love that it's exactly an exchange. It's giving and receiving. We're receiving so much from nature, and with being more attentive and aware, we are also celebrating nature.
I think that, I mean, I've had therapy, I work as a coach, so obviously I have to have a coach and have a coach supervisor. But actually, nature has been one of my biggest teachers. You know, that's where I've gained so much medicine. It's not that all of my teachers in the human form have not been of value, but I would say that nature is sitting there alongside them.
And I think this is something that we can all be grateful for, because we have nature around us. We just have to really just connect with it, really just find that time and find the courage to connect to nature and go back to the roots, like you so beautifully said it before. So I know you mentioned that you also work with a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs and business people, and I'm really curious to know how we can have this brought more into the business side, because of course we want creativity, inspiration. We all need that in our businesses, right? And I think that, you know, finding these beautiful habits that can enhance creativity can be so powerful. So what would be a prompt, an exercise, or a practice that entrepreneurs can use for nature journaling, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, and I'm sure that they will find useful this practice with nature.
So the first thing I would say is one of the things I've noticed that I need to do when I'm thinking about my corporate life, because I spend a lot of time working in the corporate world. Sometimes when we talk about the corporate world, it's almost like we want to shape what we're doing for the corporate world. And what I have found, Alexandra, is the opposite. I literally share these prompts in their fullest form with people. And what I've noticed, so like if we go to neuroscience, one of the things that neuroscience tells us is that the brain responds to novelty. So if I say, okay, for a leader, they need to have a question like this, it means that sometimes what I'm doing is I'm watering down the prompt to make it applicable to a leader in a corporate setting. But actually, what I've found is I'm doing the opposite. So I might ask somebody, a leader in working in financial sectors where I do a lot of work, I might get them to think about a place in nature in their childhood that actually brought them a lot of energy, or they have a lot of good memories because they're stressed out, they're overwhelmed, and we want to find a way to get them reconnected and back into a more resourceful state. And one of the things that I find really, really helps is to get people to do the practices in the here and now. So I get them to do 5 minutes, 7 minutes of journal writing in the session. We don't do it outside the session, we do it in the here and now, so they can have a lived, embodied experience of it. Because often people, if they don't have that kind of felt sense of it, they can just stay in their heads. They don't move it here into their heart. It doesn't become more of an embodied experience. So we'll do it in the session, and then I will get them to reflect on the process, the experience of doing the writing. And that's where I find that they then begin to make meaning of it, and they often start to shape and make sense of actually what this means for them and how it is of value for them. And then they start to create some of their own resourcefulness in that space. So I know that this one, we talked about this one at the beginning. What advice would a wise ancient tree have to give you about your current challenge? Leaders love it. They absolutely love it. This is the most popular, most remarked on card in the deck. Or I might say something like, imagine you have the strength of an ancient oak tree. How would you put that strength to work right now? What places in nature have shaped you? How has this impacted your relationship with nature today? This is a great question to then expand on. What's impacting your relationships with your team? How can you be more resourced, empowered, inspired to resource your team? What would you need to do more of? What would you need to do less of? So can you see how, for me, I think we can really play with these questions. And I always, when I'm introducing these tools and techniques to practitioners, I say to them, you know what? I want you to create your own deck. I want you to think about your clients, the families you're working with, the teams you're working with. What do you know? What do you know about them? What do you think might be really helpful? You can use these questions or just come up with your own. And that's the way in, rather than thinking that we have to kind of suddenly have all of these very different questions for corporate life. I think the corporate world's hungry for this way of working. We can't keep doing the same things and expect to get a different result.
So true. And I think that having this shift of perspective and looking at situations from the nature's point of view and having these exercises really expands on leaders' view on an entrepreneur who is maybe sometimes too focused on what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And with these kind of prompts, they will get an expanded view and perspective. This actually makes me wonder, because I know that you have published multiple writing maps and you have experience working with so many people throughout the years. What is the biggest challenge that people have when it comes to journaling?
My observations and what I hear people say over hundreds and hundreds of workshops is time, and believing that they need to have a lot of time, and not having a route map for where to start. And something I noticed, I was part of a conversation at the weekend, that little party on Saturday evening. And one of the guests at the party has actually set up a group, and people meet up and do all these different kinds of activities. And one of the activities they were doing was kayaking down the Thames at night time. I was like blown away. It was all full up. It was all fully booked. Otherwise, I got myself on there. But what I noticed in the conversation, there was a group of us all sitting around talking, was that a couple of people couldn't understand or couldn't connect with what they might get out of going kayaking. Unless it's made clear, for some people, they if they can't see a very explicit outcome, then they might not see the relevance of doing something, because journaling is not something that's visible often to other people. People don't see I haven't done 10,000 hours of journaling. I've done 100,000 hours of journaling. And that has had a very significant and positive and life-affirming impact on my life. It does not mean that I have not had difficulties. It doesn't mean that I haven't had challenges. In fact, I've had many of them and continue to have them. But I can see how the journaling has had such a restorative impact on my life. And that's where I think people feel challenged, because if we can't see an outcome that's immediate and explicit and bite-sized, that we can kind of just put it out there very, very quickly, sometimes we might dismiss the importance and the value of the practice. And I think that's why, yourself and myself and all of the wonderful people out there who are really ambassadors and champions and messengers of the world of expressive writing, therapeutic writing, journal writing. I think that's what we're trying to do, is to really help people connect with why this is a practice that you might not immediately see the benefits, but actually they're huge. And it might be that difference between a non-examined life is not worth living. That's why Socrates came up with that. For me, journaling, whenever I take my last breath, I'm not going to feel like I lived an unexamined life. In fact, what you're going to find are hundreds and hundreds of notebooks with very rich stories and narratives, and you could see my curiosity or my interest or my passion. And I think that's what a lot of people get.
Yeah, it's a transformation and a legacy.
I love that. That's exactly what you said there. Those two words, so powerful, so capturing the essence. It's transforming and it's legacy. That's it. I feel like, I planted legacy.
Oh, I love this. I love it so much. And Jackee, I could spend hours and hours talking with you about journaling. And I want to say thank you so much for your time and for all the tips, all the knowledge and the value that you shared with us today. And before we go into the last 3 rapid questions that I ask to all of my guests, I just want to acknowledge all the work that you're doing and to really appreciate everything that you are doing in terms of bringing awareness to journaling, to connection with nature, and to providing all of these prompts and tips and everything that people need in order to connect with this beautiful practice. So thank you so much, Jackee.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for those words, mean a lot to me. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And I'm going to ask you now the last 3 questions What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for being able to get up each morning and breathe and do my meditation and say thank you for a new day.
How do you impress yourself?
Do you know what I find? The way I impress myself is when I laugh at myself or I have a big belly laugh by myself. I realize how comfortable I'm becoming in my own skin, not bothered by what other people feel or what other people think, but just allowing myself to be free spirited and just true to how I'm feeling in any given moment.
Ah, so good. Such a good feeling.
It's a good look as well, by the way.
Yes, that's so true.
Good look.
And what is your definition for living your impressivity?
For me, it's when you have the courage to honor and live according to your truth and to allow that to be a true expression of yourself in some way in the world. I think that is a beautiful thing that we as human beings get to experience in our lifetimes.
So wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackee.
Thank you, Alexandra. I loved your questions. So juicy.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Live Your Impressivity Show. I'm really happy that you are paying attention to the topics of our podcast and that you love journaling. I would really appreciate to hear your feedback, and if you liked this episode, please share it with a friend or someone who might benefit from learning more about journaling. Let me know what other topics you'd be interested in, and let the power of writing to bring you joy in your everyday life. I'm Alex Badita. I'm really excited to have you here in my space and to support you to live your impressivity. Until next time, stay impressive.
Enriching speaking with you